Welcome back. It's Disclosure Day in D.C. The truth is out there, and today, out in the open. After the White House started its rollout of the long-awaited UFO and extraterrestrial life files.
For 80 years, they told us there was nothing to see. For 80 years, freedom of information requests came back blacked out. Witnesses were laughed off stage. Pilots were told to keep their mouths shut. And if you asked too many questions loudly, well, you already know how that story ends. Then, on May 8th, 2026, the United States government did something that has never been done before. It handed you the files. 162 files, reports, photographs, videos, witness accounts, military memos, NASA transcripts, astronaut testimony from the Apollo missions, all on a government website that you can visit right now. No clearance required. They called it Pursue, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, and they said it was just the beginning. Batch 2 is coming in June, and that's where things start to get interesting. So what did they actually give us? Well, what we were shown by their own description was a collection of unresolved cases, meaning the government still cannot explain what they've seen. We're talking sightings that stretch from 1944 all the way to 2025. Encounters in the skies above the United States, Africa, the Middle East, Japan, Syria and Iraq. Reports from Air Force pilots, FBI field memos, and footage from infrared cameras, gun cameras, and military drone systems that the Pentagon says it cannot definitively explain. Among the files, NASA transcripts from the Apollo missions. On the Apollo 11 flight, Buzz Aldrin described seeing what he called, and this is a direct quote from the declassified transcript, a fairly bright light source which we tentatively ascribe to a possible laser. On Apollo 12, astronaut Alan Bean reported flashes of light that he described as sailing off into space. And on Apollo 17, a photograph showing 3 light in a triangular formation above the lunar terrain. The astronauts theorized those lights might be chunks of ice. Maybe they were right, or maybe the moon is a lot more crowded than we've been told. More recent files include a 2025 FBI report describing a super hot orb that has been hovering around the ground. When a helicopter crew went to investigate, the orb reportedly traveled 20 miles at a speed the helicopter couldn't match. A 2024 report described a football-shaped object near Japan. A 2025 US military report flagged a UAP over African airspace. And the 2026 US Army report covered an unspecified North American sighting. 108 of the 162 files contain redactions. Just let that settle for a moment. 108 out of 162 files redacted. Now here's where it gets speculative. Here's where we have to put on the tinfoil hat. Because within hours of the release, a familiar chorus started up. Researchers, investigators, former government officials, people who have spent decades pushing for exactly this kind of disclosure, and their reaction was not celebration, it was suspicion. John Greenwald Jr., who spent 30 years filing FOIA requests for exactly these type of documents, noticed something immediately. For years, whenever researchers pushed for UAP imagery and videos, the government said it couldn't release them because doing so would reveal sensitive methods and sources. They claimed even the imagery itself was classified in ways that made declassification impossible. Batch 1 proved that was a lie. If they can release this, why couldn't they release it before? What's changed? And more importantly, what are they still holding back? The theory: this is a managed trip, a controlled burn. They're releasing the materials they can afford to let go. The ambiguous, the murky, the things that generate headlines without generating answers. while the genuinely explosive material stays locked away, either redacted into oblivion or simply not included in these trenches at all. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence Christopher Mellon, one of the architects of the modern UAP transparency movement, put it more diplomatically. Quote, "For years the public was told there was little to see. The scale of what exists is itself a revelation. But researchers on the ground are less measured. At least one prominent voice has already noted that data alone is not disclosure. They gave you the files. They didn't give you the answers." Here's something that has been quietly glossed over in the mainstream coverage. This release didn't come from the Department of Defense. It came from the Department of War. If that sounds ominous, then you're paying attention. Earlier this year, the Pentagon was quietly restructured. The Department of Defense, a name deliberately chosen after World War II to signal a shift away from warmongering, is now officially the Department of War again, and the UAP files are hosted at war.gov. Pursue, Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, lives on a military war site. Now, some will say that's just bureaucratic shuffling, an administrative rename, nothing to read into. Others will note that rebranding the entire defense apparatus while simultaneously initiating the most significant UAP disclosure in American history is a very interesting coincidence of timing. And on the Tinfoil archives, we don't believe in coincidences. The government has confirmed that Batch 2 is coming in approximately 30 days from the May 8th release, meaning sometime in June 2026. Trenches will continue after that, released every few weeks on a rolling basis as they were discovered and declassified. Discovered. That word is doing a lot of work. You don't discover documents that have been sitting in file cabinets for 80 years. You locate them. You choose to include them. The word discovered implies surprise, as if the government itself doesn't know what's in its own archives. So what might Batch 2 contain? Well, there is speculation that gets genuinely wild, but also genuinely interesting. Theory 1. The USO files. For years, whistleblowers and researchers have claimed that unidentified submerged objects, UAPs that operate underwater, represent some of the most consistent and unexplained encounters in military history. The USS Nimitz incident had aerial components, but there were reported underwater signature anomalies too. Navy sonar operators have described objects moving at impossible speeds, at impossible depths. If Batch 2 focuses on the underwater dimension, and some speculate it will, the implications are staggering. Because a craft that can operate equally well in the atmosphere and at depth is not a drone, it's not a weather balloon, and it's certainly not swamp gas. Theory 2. The redacted identities. Of the 108 redacted files in Batch 1, the Pentagon says the redactions exist to protect eyewitness identities and the locations of government facilities. But researchers immediately push back. Some of these witnesses are presumably deceased. Some of these facilities are presumably decommissioned. So why are the redactions still in place? Well, one possibility, and the most uncomfortable one, is that the redactions aren't protecting people. They're protecting conclusions or assessments. Analytical language that goes somewhere that government isn't ready to go publicly. Not, we saw something strange, but we know what it was. Theory 3. The chain of custody problem. The Pursue initiative is a multi-agency effort. The Pentagon is running it, but the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is involved. The FBI handed over its first classified UAP batch to the Pentagon just 2 days before the release, and Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, described a comprehensive multi-agency declassification program currently underway. Multi-agencies mean multiple bureaucracies, multiple chains of command, Multiple people with the power to slow roll, emit, or quietly disappear material before it reaches the public. The question isn't whether the agencies are cooperating, the question is whether they are all giving up the same things. Theory 4, and this is the one we can't stop thinking about. It is the simplest. They're watching to see what happens. Batch 1 was a test. They released enough to generate reaction, enough to get researchers, journalists and the public to start publicly identifying what they noticed, what they're looking for and what they care about. And in 30 days, Batch 2 is calibrated accordingly, not to answer questions, but to direct them. Controlled disclosure is still control. So what do we actually know? So, stripped of the speculation sitting in the actual declassified files, on May 8, 2026, the United States Department of War launched Pursue and released 162 declassified files relating to UAPs. This is the first time a dedicated, publicly accessible government portal for UAP documents has existed in American history. The files span from 1944 to 2025 and include military reports, FBI memos, NASA transcripts, infrared imagery, and witness testimony from Apollo mission astronauts. The Pentagon confirmed that the released materials are unresolved cases, meaning the government cannot make a definitive determination about what was observed. 108 of the 162 released files contained redactions. The Pentagon has stated that no redactions were made concerning information about the nature or existence of any encounter reported as UAP, or in other words, they say they haven't hidden what the things are, only who saw them and where. The Apollo transcripts also include the release of genuine NASA debriefing records. Buzz Aldrin's account of observing an unidentified light source during the Apollo 11 mission was always a matter of public record. The Pursue release presents it with fewer redactions and in original document form. A second dump of files is confirmed for approximately June 2026. The Pentagon is committed to releasing new material every few weeks on a rolling basis as they are discovered and declassified. The scope and content of Batch 2 is unknown at the time of this episode's production. The Pursue initiative follows years of formal congressional pressure, including multiple pieces of legislation mandating UAP transparency, the creation of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in 2022, and the public disclosure of 3 Navy UAP videos in 2020. This is not a sudden decision, it is the end point of a long institutional campaign. Former Arrow director Sean Kirkpatrick, the man who ran the government's official UAP investigation office, reacted to the Batch 1 release with notable skepticism. He cautioned that without any analysis or context, the files will only serve to fuel more speculation, conspiracy, and armchair pseudoscience. Whether you read that as a responsible scientific caution or as a man protecting institutional conclusions is, as always, up to you. The government has spent 80 years telling us that there's nothing to see. Now they're showing us exactly what they want us to look at. And the question, the only question that has ever mattered in this conversation, is whether those are the same thing. Batch 2 drops in June, and we'll be watching. Thank you all for tuning in, everybody, and we do really appreciate that. Make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button. If you are watching us on TikTok, please drop me a follow and let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next and what material you would like us to produce, and we will look into that. Thank you all again for the time and your energy, and until next time, truth seekers, take care and stay safe.